this week we will continue talking about how being in a group can influence people's behavior and their thoughts. It also marks the 2/3 point for the class. So as of this week, we are 2/3 of the way through the class. So last week, modules 17 through 19 talked about how being in a group can make people behave differently, including being more hostile or dangerous. Module 20 for this week talks about how being in a group can make people think differently, and Module 21 talks about how individuals can prevent or reduce some of the negative influence of groups. This week I'll do things a little bit differently. I'll start by introducing the two modules that we'll be looking at this week, and then I will review the activities this week, and then I will conclude in the last video by looking at feedback from last week's activities. Starting with Module 20, looking at how groups intensify decisions. Group polarization is the idea that people's beliefs or thoughts actually get more extreme when they're in a group. This has been explained by the arguments that people give or by concern for acceptance by others in the group. And as you're reading this section, make sure that you can relate this to the discussion of conformity in prior modules. Making decisions in a group can be problematic when the group is cohesive, when they're close-knit group, or when they're isolated from other viewpoints, or when the group has a leader that communicates what they think is the right answer. These can all lead to groupthink. Pay attention to the details within the symptoms of groupthink on pages 226 and 227. The book also discusses strategies for preventing groupthink. Make sure that you're familiar with those. In Module 21, we're looking at the power of the situation versus the power of the person. The situation doesn't have sole influence over your behavior or thoughts, as you know. The person themselves also influences their own behavior. And it's most likely an interaction between these two, between the person and the situation. On page 232, the book talks about 3 ways this interaction can happen. The power of the person can hold more influence when you activate a couple strategies. Check out the influence of reactance and of asserting uniqueness for more information. The book also talks about minority influence. The minority group isn't always at the mercy of the majority. If no minority groups or individuals ever spoke out, there wouldn't have been any changes historically in how society works. So we might still have a feudal society, or we might still have slavery, if it weren't for a vocal and active minority. 3 factors described in the textbook contribute to minority influence: consistency, self-confidence, and defections from the majority. Check out the text's description about how these 3 factors lead to minority influence. For this week, I would encourage you to review Week 9 feedback, which will be upcoming in the next video, then read through modules 20 and 21, compose your online post by Sunday at midnight. The description will be shown in Scholar. Then complete Quiz 8 by Sunday at midnight, and submit your 4th reflective writing by Sunday at midnight. This will get back to the topics of working in groups and how you think about working in groups. And just as I mentioned last week, be working on your group project paper. If you submit your draft by April 3rd, I will give you early feedback before you submit the final version of your paper. And next week, we will be moving to Section 4, which looks at social relations, which is how we relate to one another. We'll look at negative things like prejudice, aggression, and conflict, but also some positive things, liking, loving, and helping each other.